The world tracks the progress of the semiconductor war through tangible objects, the cargo ships crossing the Pacific, and the physical numbers on a spec sheet. These objects are easy to measure, making them the default metric for success in Washington and Beijing. This creates a straightforward logic for the Chinese state. If they allocate enough capital, build enough factories, and hire enough engineers, they assume domestic firms can eventually reverse engineer an AI chip that matches the physical specifications of an American Nvidia GPU. On paper, this strategy is working. The Huawei Ascend 910C possesses raw mathematical capabilities that genuinely approach Nvidia's older flagship models, giving the impression that the hardware gap is closing. However, a microchip remains a useless piece of refined sand until it is given the software libraries and communication protocols required to run it. Obsessing over physical specs overlooks the instructions that actually make the hardware function. Designing a brilliant blueprint on a computer screen is entirely separate from the physics of manufacturing it at scale. Nvidia functions as a fabless company, drawing the blueprints and outsourcing the physical printing to TSMC in Taiwan. To create circuits at the atomic level, TSMC relies on extreme ultraviolet lithography machines, which are built exclusively by a single Dutch monopoly called ASML. To generate the ultrafine light needed to print these chips, the machine shoots a high-powered industrial laser at a microscopic droplet of molten tin, 50,000 times a second, vaporizing it into a glowing plasma. Because U.S. export controls block Chinese foundries from buying these machines, SMIC is forced to use older, inferior equipment. To achieve modern transistor density, they use multi-patterning, running silicon wafers through the machines up to 5 times and overlapping the etched lines in an attempt to create finer circuits. As this breakdown illustrates, the technique is an economic disaster. A misalignment of a fraction of a nanometer shorts out the circuit. By early 2025, the manufacturing yield for Huawei's new chip sat around 40%, meaning 6 out of 10 expensive chips are literally thrown in the garbage. A perfect manufacturing yield would still leave Huawei behind, as the critical leverage has moved from the assembly line into the code. In 2006, GPUs were niche components built strictly for video games. They contained thousands of efficient computing cores, but programming them to do anything else required obscure graphics languages that few computer scientists wanted to touch. Jensen Huang realized those cores could perform complex general-purpose math simultaneously. To unlock that power, Nvidia created CUDA, a software platform that allowed developers to write code for GPUs using standard languages like C++ or Python. Investors initially hated the move, and Nvidia's stock price cratered. The company was spending hundreds of millions of dollars building a software layer for a scientific market that did not yet exist. But Nvidia held firm, seeding CUDA into universities and research labs for free. Today, nearly every major AI framework, from Meta's PyTorch to Google's TensorFlow, is optimized to run natively on CUDA. This network of 5.1 million developers creates an exclusive ecosystem that has become the universal language of the industry. Huawei is attempting to bridge this gap with its own software, Cant, but researchers report severe stability issues. The documentation is so poor that Huawei has been forced to deploy its own engineers to customer data centers to manually rewrite their clients' code. Replacing Nvidia's hardware means convincing the global talent pool to abandon 18 years of stable, optimized code. Speed on a spec sheet means nothing to a researcher who has to restart their work from scratch. Modern AI has moved beyond single processors. Training a state-of-the-art large language model now requires clusters of up to 100,000 GPUs operating in flawless synchronization. To manage this data, Nvidia utilizes proprietary NV-link cables and InfiniBand networking gear. This allows GPUs within a server rack to share memory directly at blistering speeds, bypassing the traditional motherboards that act as bottlenecks in older systems. When Huawei attempts to brute force thousands of chips into a single cluster, the inter-chip connectivity lags. Data packets stall and queue up, leading to massive power consumption and system crashes that stall the training of massive AI models. Nvidia's business model now revolves around entire supercomputing ecosystems, combining the chips, the networking logic, and the pre-optimized code into a single, orchestrated package. This chart reveals the reality of the 2024 market. Despite being offered subsidized domestic chips, Chinese tech giants spent $16 billion stockpiling Nvidia's H20 units, chips that the U.S. government had intentionally degraded to remain below export thresholds. These companies chose crippled American hardware because the risk of migrating away from the CUDA ecosystem outweighed the benefits of switching to faster domestic physical hardware. By 2026, the target has moved even further. While Huawei works to improve individual chip yields, Nvidia has shifted to rack-scale computing with the Blackwell architecture. Their flagship product is the GB200, a multi-million-dollar liquid-cooled rack. Connected by a sprawling copper backplane, this entire structure operates logically to the software as one single, massive superchip. Nvidia's dominance is anchored by 18 years of software integration and networking standards that have become the universal architecture for global AI development. Victory in this technological standoff belongs to the architect of the ecosystem that holds 100,000 chips in sync.